Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know. To you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? A long man who brings a job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed? It's up to you. It's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy, and the change that's over too. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect with you live for the 14th of January 2024. And it continues to be something that every time I say that, I think to myself, my goodness, it is 2024 already. It really is something special. We are live right now across Facebook and on YouTube, youtube.com/that other side of information, to every single place that has shared our program, allowed our program to be part of your part of the Facebook universe. We thank you very, very sincerely and very deeply. We could not do it without you. And let me get through that bit first, and I'll get into some show news. We simply couldn't do it without you. And the number of groups and individuals, small, medium, large, regional, national, worldwide, although technically every group on Facebook is worldwide because anybody can find it, but you get my point, continues to grow. The number of folks who allow us to be part of your Facebook world continues to grow almost literally every week. And again, every administrator of every group, every moderator, everyone that has the power to say, yes, this can be shared into this group, or no, it can't. We couldn't do it without you. We rely on you. We depend on you. It is the chief way, if you will, that our program is disseminated, along with 101. I'll get to that in a second. So we thank you for that. We couldn't do it without you. And we deeply, deeply appreciate it. Wherever you are on Facebook, in any of those groups that have allowed us to be part of said group, or if you are at that other side of information, or if you are on my own personal timeline, thank you for being there. We are live right now for the 14th of January, and this is the Kennedy Effect. We appreciate you so very much. If you want to come to our home group Facebook page, you are of course welcome to do so, or stay right where you are. Continue to watch, listen, and enjoy. You can also come to my personal timeline, Jeff Kennedy. That is where I will see your comments and questions if you have any, and I hope that you will. That's the place I'll see them. If you happen to be watching on, just for an example, the AOC progressives, almost 100,000 people, believe it or not. I don't see your comments, unfortunately. It's at my own timeline, my own name, Jeff Kennedy. That's where I see them. And I also see them on YouTube. If you watch live on YouTube and make a comment, I will see it in real time. If you have questions, I will be able to answer them. We can talk about it. And on. Hot101.net, our name is, our web address. All the programming that preceded me today told you and pumped up our show, which is exactly why the Hot101.net family is so special. Because I can tell you, if you are listening to Hot101.net, and you should be, whether you listen to me and no one else, What a shame. You're missing out on such tremendous, tremendous talent and so much fun. You really need to be listening to hot101.net, and we all back each other up here. The DJs on 101 are deeply, deeply talented people, and you need to be checking them out. Now, I've told you this story before. You might think to yourself, "Oh, I'm not a hip hop guy. I'm not a dance music guy. I'm not maybe or gal, I should say." And maybe you aren't. But when you listen to these DJs do what they do with music that you didn't think you liked, and it is done with such perfection and artistry and talent, you really, really do get into it. And I think you need to be checking it out. And I strongly, strongly implore you to do that. Check it out. It really is done with artistry. And by the way, it's not just thumpy, clubby dance music if that's not your thing, or EDM or any of that. Just there are folks on there who do 70s shows. Somebody did a 60s show not that long ago. 80s is very prevalent there as well, and 90s. Just check it out. It's fantastic. Our name is our web address, hot101.net, but you don't need to go to the main website to listen. You can use our apps, Apple App Store for Apple devices, Google Play Store for Android devices. If you have any other type of device, try the Tune In radio app. You just go up to the search bar, type in hot101.net, and boom, you're listening. And as far as the Apple apps and Android apps go, hey, no login, no sign in, no credit card, no blood sample. Don't have to hand over your firstborn, no retina scan, none of that stuff. You tap, the app opens, and you're listening. And it's that simple. It is that simple. Hot101.net. And don't forget, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. If you can connect to the internet anywhere on the globe, you can listen to hot101.net. We're also part of the TCP Media Group. We continue to be, and we are, I believe we're live on Ghost Claw Productions right now as well. Quick programming note, the Villain's View will not be with you this evening. I think that is in deference to the NFL playoffs, which I clearly don't care about quite as much. Maybe we can even talk about that tonight. I don't care about it, honestly, not just because the Giants aren't in it, but because they just don't anymore. As much of a, perhaps we could talk about that a little later in the program, but as much of an NFL fan as I used to be, I am not any longer. I think it is much less of a sport than it used to be. It's much more of a television show, but it's a television show that tens of millions of people around the country watch. It is the highest rated thing consistently, and that's why, I think that might be why Villain's View is off tonight, and I can't dispute that. I mean, it's kind of a sound decision making. If you've been with us for 5 years, you know that we take off on Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm strongly considering taking off on Championship Sunday as well, because you know. But regardless, we're here now. Let me get into some show news really quick. George is here, which I'm blessed for. I'm very happy about. There are no guests tonight, folks. You will see that the phone number is already up on the screen. And Randall, you will see that the graphic has been corrected. Kristen did that a few days ago. George worked on it as well, got it formatted, looking pretty on screen. Might need to do a different color background there. I'm going to have to think about that one. Maybe something marbly or checkered or black or gray, something. I'll think of something to go behind that. But we did correct the graphic. How about that? 6 p.m. Eastern time. And the phone number is right there as well. The phone number is in my Zoom square as well. Very, very thrilled to have George here. Very blessed and humbled to have him here. He's got plenty of other things he could be doing with himself, and he continues to be a dear friend that I probably take for granted way too much, to be very honest with you. He's one of the best men I know, and I'm so glad that he's here this evening. Let me do a little show news, please. I was in a meeting on Tuesday night, and I had how many Democratic meetings did I have this week? I think 3. It was a light week, although I did 2 of them simultaneously on Monday evening, and then I had one on Tuesday evening. And it was interesting because even though the meeting I had on Tuesday evening, I'm an officer for that particular group, I try to hang back and not talk too much. I talk here for 3 hours a week, sometimes more, sometimes a little less. I get a feeling in my gut it's going to be a little less tonight. I'm having trouble bringing in air tonight. But that said, I just decided, I don't know what made me think of it, but I just decided I'm going to go through all the groups that I share this program to, and the groups that are kind enough to allow me to share this program to, and just total up the number of members of all those groups. So I did that. And this is a very poorly handwritten result. I don't have the best handwriting of all the groups. And so then on the back of the paper, and I guarantee you I did this with the assistance of a calculator, I decided to total up all the members of all the various groups across just Facebook, that we reach each week. Doesn't mean that all of these folks in this number are listening and watching every week, although those numbers continue to grow. It's the number of people that we can potentially reach every single week. And I am humbled to say that that number between Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever we want to refer to it this week, Instagram, TikTok, Hot 101, TCP, and right here, all these Facebook groups and so on. I think I started that way. Am I forgetting something? I don't think so. Am I forgetting a social media, George? I don't think I am. Twitter, I did that. Facebook, YouTube. Oh, YouTube. We have a new YouTube subscriber this week as well. But my point is, my very, very long-winded, fractured point is that when you total up the number of people that we reach each week, and again, I'm not so egotistical as to think that every single one of these folks is listening live or even on the recording for that matter, but the number of people that we reach each week, they have to choose to listen, but we reach them, is now about 500,000. 500,000. I'll take it. And as I mentioned at the top, as I mentioned at every half-hour reset, as I mentioned, well, when I remember to do the half-hour reset, that we couldn't do it without you. And that is the absolute drop-dead truth. We could not do it without you. All the groups, all the pages, all the individuals on Instagram, on TikTok, my partners in this, everybody at Hot 101, everybody at TCP could not do it without you. Now, again, let me be very, very clear. I'm not claiming anything that is not true. That does not mean that 500,000 people around the globe are listening every single week, but we reach that many people. All the more reason why you should consider advertising here, folks. We reach those people. They have the ability to listen to us. It is in their Facebook groups. It's on their pages. It's in their, if you can connect to the internet, you can listen to Hot 101. So that's a pretty cool thing. I had no idea. I truly had no idea how many people we were reaching each week. Not because, well, I should say, I didn't realize it was that high. I'd never actually sat down and done the math. And I thought I should do an updated one because I had a feeling it was way more people than that, than what I had been saying, which was about 150,000. It is about 500,000 people globally each week. And what's really cool, among some of the groups that we share to, now I didn't list the names of the groups with these numbers, but check out some of the numbers. There's a group here with 94,300 people. Another one with 93,000. Here's one with 3,800, 6,000, 11,900, 5,100, 2,700, 15,900. 500,000 people each week. Who'd of thunk it? 500,000 each week. So thank you to everybody. Literally, thank you. I'm humbled. I hope that you know how sincere I am. Thank you, and thank you again. So no guests tonight, just George, me, and you. A great time to call. Great time to post your comments, ask your questions, and stimulate the conversation. It is your program, not mine. We do this together. I will take you as long as I can keep breath in my lungs, which so far is not going well. I don't know why, but boy, I can't keep breath in my lungs. I have to keep stopping and taking these deep breaths and trying to reset myself here. Randall was kind enough to ask in the chat how Kristen and I are feeling post-COVID. My response to him, which I am happy to share with you, because of course you can read it, it's right there on Facebook, is that he asked if we are any better. Answer is yes and no. Overall, are we better? Oh, goodness, yes. I'm infinitely better than we were. But we are still, there is still lingering bits of this thing. This is a serious, terribly invasive, gnarly little virus. It hangs around. Now, I'm testing negative. If I tested right now for you during the program, I'd be negative. All the current medical science tells you I am in no way even a risk to spread. But there's still leftover effects of it. And I think, I'm extrapolating a little bit here. Let me be blunt. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on this program. This is why the doctors were so worried that I would get it, because it continues to affect my breathing. I have asthma. I've had it since I was born. I do not take any prescriptions for it now that Primatene is available over the counter again. That's just cheaper and more readily available in an emergency. I guess that was a free plug for Primatene, but I do have it. I very quickly get out of breath. I get out of breath for doing relatively simple things. I always get it back. It just takes me a second or two, but I'm finding now that just holding conversations is really, if you'll pardon the expression, because I don't mean it in the context that we normally say it, it takes my breath away, as it is tonight. So we'll keep going as long as we can, well, we certainly won't run out of things to talk about, but we'll keep going as long as we can. So if you are out there listening, and if you've never called the program before, or if you have, this is a great night to do it. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. On the header of the program, as I shared it about, we mentioned to you, some of the things. I think essentially we're going to kind of look back at the week and review a little bit. There were some really interesting stories, not just in politics, but we had some really huge discoveries in the world of archaeology, some of which might just force even mainstream archaeology to rethink the history of human civilization. Just a small little thought, like the history of human civilization. There was news from space this week as the privately funded lunar lander is damaged and will not be able to land on the moon at all. And if it does, it will likely crash into it. It will not be able to land and be functional. And of course, the discovery of two galactic superstructures that have actually changed the way astronomers think about the distribution of matter throughout the universe. And I wish I had saved the graphic for it. Perhaps if I can find it without stop talking, because usually when I try to search something and talk at the same time, it gets very silent. But I will send it. If I can clip it somewhere quickly, I will send it to George and maybe he can put it up on the screen. Super last minute notice. George loves when I do last minute noticey things like that. Loves it, lives for it. But it literally is changing the way astronomers are considering the way matter is distributed through the universe. They've found these two enormous structures of linked galaxies. One is in a bit of a circle pattern, one is in a bit of a snake-like pattern. They are actually relatively close to each other. I believe the circular structure is 1.2 billion light years across at its furthest point. So it's really cool stuff. But let's get into what I think the big story is going to be coming up this coming week. Before we look back, it would be kind of silly to skip over it. Let's get to the elephant in the room, if you will, no pun intended. And that is, of course, that the Iowa caucuses are Monday night. And all the polling seems to indicate that we will have a new historical record, I guess, if you will, for the outcome. So this statistic is a little in the weeds, and I hope you'll stick with me as I plow through it. The largest margin of victory in the Iowa caucuses in all of presidential election history by a non-incumbent president is 13 points. Right? Everybody with me? So that means the largest margin of victory for a candidate in Iowa for president who was not the current sitting president running for re-election is 13 points. Trump is up by almost 30. I believe it's 54. I think he's almost 30 points up on DeSantis, who is only a few points above Nikki Haley. And what does that tell us? If anything, I can tell you what I think it tells us. It tells us that it confirms for me, is maybe the language I should use. It confirms for me that the Republican Party as we knew it, even as it dipped its more than its toe, its feet up to its knees at a minimum, into the fascist pool, starting with Nixon on to Reagan, and then probably went about chest deep with George W. Bush, is full blown now. The Republican Party no longer exists. It exists in name only. It is, in essence, now a megachurch, like Joel Osteen's or the late Pat Robertson's, or the late Jerry Falwell's mega church. It is the cult of one billionaire. And about 40% of the population will do whatever he tells them. Truly a nightmare scenario that the framers themselves were wary of and frightened of and thought could happen. Anything he says. That's why tens of thousands stormed the Capitol January 6th, 2021, because he told them to. When he tells them, boy, gee, I hope nothing bad happens to so and so and so and so, the death threats come in the hundreds and thousands because they know exactly what he's saying. And give him a bit of credit. He never comes right out and says, boy, somebody should assassinate this person. No, he does it like a TV movie mob boss. Cute little town you got here. I'd hate for something to happen to it. Interesting campaign you're running. Hate for something to happen to it. He has now multiple rulings in front of the Supreme Court. So what do his staffers, high-level staffers and lawyers do? Yeah, I'm sure the justices will remember who appointed them. In other words, we put you there, do as we say. Protect us. You owe us. This is not America. We are the country that defeated fascism globally twice. In fact, I would argue 3 times, because the American Civil War, the South was a fascist dictatorship. Long before Mussolini made the word, or that we commonly knew what fascism was, the Confederate States were a fascist country. Rule and complete control by a tiny, tiny handful of the richest. We are the nation that defeated global fascism 3 times. You would think we would know more about it. You would think we would be more wary of it. And yet here we are on the precipice of becoming the largest fascist nation in the history of the country and the history of the planet. Well, obviously in the history of the country. Duh. Say dumb things. That's why we may not go too long tonight. Say silly things. Instead of the largest continuously, quote unquote, operating democracy, we are one election away from becoming its largest fascist dictatorship. And it all begins Monday night in Iowa. 6:31 Eastern Time, halfway through the first hour of the Kennedy Effect. Welcome, welcome, welcome all. Please share, repost, give us a like. Go to YouTube, give us a subscribe, Instagram likes, TikTok likes, all of it. It means everything to us. It helps us continue to promote and disseminate the program. One of the cool things that's happened the last couple of weeks is I have, tell you, just, oh goodness, where did the thing go? Not funny. I have on TikTok, I'll tell you because it's staggering, only 374 followers. For comparison, Sergeant Mac has 1.5 million. I have 374. In this world of social media, that's actually way funnier than I intend it to be. The last couple weeks, though, almost 2 weeks ago, just shy of 1,900, and today just shy of 1,700 people watched my promotional video, and a new record number of people shared it. It's cool. I'm not patting myself on the back. There's no halo up here. I don't do this show for self-promotion. I don't need to be recognized on the streets, any of that stuff. But you know, when people who are not regularly, he tried to say, following you, watch your stuff, it's kind of cool. So anyway, that's I just wanted to throw that out there real fast. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's pretty cool. What can I say? That's pretty cool. And in this social media world, it means when you like, when you subscribe, when you share, when you do any of that, it actually makes a real big difference. So I hope you will continue to do so, and all of you. And if you have any additional groups that you think we should be part of, you can always drop us a message at our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, and let us know. Anyway, he meant to say Facebook, our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, my personal named timeline, Jeff Kennedy's where we are right now live. Come on over or stay right where you are. Continue to watch and listen, enjoy, and the group page, whatever of your choice. If you want to interact with us, you do need to come over to my Facebook page, which is Jeff Kennedy. I will see your comments and questions there. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. Any type of device that can connect to the internet and has a speaker, you can listen. Desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, Bluetooth it to speakers, earphones, earbuds, Bluetooth it in the car. Usually your car stereo is really quite good. Great place to Bluetooth hot101.net 24/7, 365, all around the globe. Hot101.net is there. Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android devices, and the Tune In radio app. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net and the TCP, the TCP Media Group, and Ghost Claw Productions. No live episode of The Villain's View tonight. Lads are taking a week off, and they went straight through the holidays. So good for them. They're taking a week off. So we will take you as long as I can keep hair, which is not good so far. But that said, let's get into a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. So keep an eye on Iowa. Watch your news. Keep an eye on Iowa. The caucuses are tomorrow night. They're tomorrow night. They're not a Tuesday. They are tomorrow night. If I'm wrong about that, somebody can scream at me on Facebook and let me know. Let's go through, if we can, please, the old Facebook page. We'll go through some of the stories that we mentioned in our header. And again, of course, as I mentioned, we'll take you as long as we can, up to 9, if we make it that long. Interesting contribution from our dear friend Patricia, who posts an article from Penn Star Capital. Headline: once known for its pollution, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, becomes a poster child for climate consciousness. The National Climate Assessment shines a light on the city's, Pittsburgh's, quote unquote, innovative plans to curb flooding based on heavier precipitation rates. The city of Pittsburgh's incorporation of climate change projections into its stormwater control regulations have been highlighted by the National Climate Assessment as an example of how a city can prepare itself for bigger, more frequent rainstorms produced by climate change. Here in the Lehigh Valley, in the last week, we have had 6 inches of rain in a week. Might not sound like much. Let's remember that the snow to rain ratio, I believe, is 10-1. So that would have been 5 feet of snow. in a week. In fact, we had last Saturday into Sunday, we had about 5 inches of snow, which then turned to rain. On Tuesday, we had almost 5 inches of rain. We had rain and snow squalls tonight or today. We're expecting more rain or snow again on Tuesday. Now, look, it's winter. It's supposed to snow. But what this article highlights is a city that is planning for these increases in precipitation. Rare now is the time that we get a very steady, I would say light, but steady rainfall throughout a day like we all did when we were kids. We now get dumped on in an extremely short amount of time, heavy, heavy numbers, or we don't see rain for 3 weeks. That's simply not how it used to be. The planetary climate is changing. To highlight that, let's think about news that came out this week from the United Nations. That 2023 was easily and by far the warmest year on a global average in the history of recorded weather. Now, that goes back about 150 years. And what were we as a general planetary society? What were we about 150 years ago? We were still largely agricultural. In fact, the United States economy was 99% agricultural up until, I believe, the Civil War period, when a mass growth of industrial mechanization and the economy began to move into industrial following the Civil War. So what were we 150 years ago? And this is true planet-wide, by the way. There were steam engines and so on, but we were not certainly fully mechanized. The full industrial revolution had not yet taken place. So in the history of these weather records, these climate records, 2023 was the warmest ever recorded. In fact, there are some scientists who would say it might have been the warmest pretty much ever since the climate stabilized. We have had ice ages, we have had warmer years before man even populated the earth. But even when you look through the fossil record, ice core samples, things like that, 2023 warmest. The science behind global climate change is not difficult. Carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, sun beats down, those gases trap that heat inside the planet's atmosphere, and the planet heats up. It's very, very simple. And as we continue to throw trillions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere, that effect is exacerbated. It's really quite simple. The science behind it really is quite simple. It is also factual. If global warming, global heating, the existential crisis of global climate change was not real, then the oil companies would not have tried to bury the science. But we know for a fact that they did, and still are. The corporation now known as ExxonMobil, they weren't at the time, they were Esso, I think at that time, ESSO, knew as late as the late 50s that what their company was doing was going to change the global climate permanently. And yet, rather than change as a company, rather than warn the public, rather than become a green energy company, solar technology goes back to the 60s. It wasn't nearly as efficient as it is now, but the technology itself goes back to the 50s. Sorry, 60s. Rather than transition to become a green energy company, they buried the science because they would have rather have had the trillions of dollars that we have handed them, both free money and to purchase their products, than save the planet. Greed. When there's no oxygen left, they'll choke like the rest of us. They didn't care about that. Just wanted to stuff their pockets with trillions of dollars. As early as the turn of the 20th century, meaning the late 1800s into the 1900s, the oxygen content of the planet was as high as 23, 24%. It is now about 16, 17%. And we wonder why there are so many more people who literally have difficulty breathing. This is a symptom of global climate change because we're just throwing tons and tons of things into the air that aren't oxygen. The science is real. It is indisputable. And it is, if we look back on what we were talking about last week, that only democracy, small d democracy, small d democratic principles, not even Democratic Party principles, democratic principles, Athenian framers, democratic, native tribe, democratic principles, small d democratic principles, will ever save us from such a thing, because fascists simply don't care. Greed is the religion, greed and power. Only democracy can save us from the disaster of global climate change that is coming, and that to some extent is irreparable. We are only making it worse. Something to think about going ahead. Randall commented, I'm trying to read it. Global warming equals climate change, correct? Global climate change equals the polar ice not forming enough, and so on. The vortex has been disrupted from the poles to the south in waves of polar vortex. All right. I will try to explain this too. Sometimes simply by words and audio, radio isn't always the best thing to describe these deeper concepts, and then we'll try not to bore you all to tears. So you will get climate deniers on the other side who are not, real climate deniers, by the way. They're very much like the crowd that denied that smoking caused cancer. Well, if you take tens of millions of dollars from the people making cigarettes, you'll probably tend to tell people that smoking doesn't cause cancer. In fact, some of the same spokespeople and lawyers that fought for the tobacco companies are now climate deniers because their pockets are stuffed with petrodollars. Oh my God, Jeff, it's going to be 10 degrees out. In fact, I think it's Wednesday here in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania. Let me see. Daytime high Monday, 31, Tuesday, 31, Wednesday, 25. So actually already what we were told was going to be a dangerously cold week has already moderated a bit. Last time I looked at this, Wednesday, I think it was supposed to be in the teens during the day. Thursday, 31, Friday, 30, Saturday, 22. That's bloody cold. So, and then the following week, back up into the 30s and mid to upper 40s for January. Tell me nothing's wrong. There is a belt of air that goes over the North American continent, over the United States, called the jet stream. Airlines will actually try to fly in the jet stream because it helps push the plane along quicker. That's why it takes longer to fly west than it does to fly east, because if the plane can get up into the jet stream, it will literally push the plane along. It is a barrier of air that moves from west to east, sometimes almost straight across the country. If you are somewhere around my age and you used to watch Good Morning America, the old weatherman John Anderson, who was one of the founders of the Weather Channel, by the way, would always have the jet stream up. And in the winter months, above the jet stream would be the cold air, below it would be warm air. And the jet stream was a barrier. When the jet stream sinks down, cold air comes down from Canada. When it moves up, the warm air is allowed to come up from the tropics and the equatorial regions. The jet stream and its strength is largely, well, it's determined also by the rotation of the Earth, gravity, but also by ocean currents and ocean temperatures. Because those currents and temperatures are changing drastically because of the accelerated melting of the polar ice caps and the Greenland ice sheet, the jet stream is no longer as strong or as predictable as it once was, which means it can move wildly north and south within a given week. And the bends in it can be very extreme, rather than it being more of a, generally speaking, a river across the country. The United States, not every country has its own jet stream. The jet stream for the Northern Hemisphere happens to run right across the United States. But now, if you see a map during the weather forecast of the jet stream, you will see wild bends. You will see it enter around the state of Washington, dip down to Texas, and then possibly back up to Maine again. These things didn't happen when I was a kid. The jet stream was relatively stable, and it was much stronger than it is today. It doesn't mean it was a perfectly straight line. It doesn't mean that on occasion there wouldn't be a, kind of interesting, neat sort of bend. But the wild sort of swings in our day-to-day weather are dictated largely by the jet stream. It's the reason why we can have January days that are in the 50s and feel like spring, because the jet stream moves higher. Or why you can have 30 degrees one day, 50 the next, back into the 20s the next, because that barrier is not as strong as it used to be. It can't hold back the heavier Arctic air the way that it once did. This is a result of changes in ocean temperatures, which have then changed the currents of the ocean. One of the reasons the British Isles are habitable at all is that there is a current, which George will probably be able to find the name of. I want to say it's the North American current, but I could very well have that wrong. That carries water from the Caribbean, tomato, off the eastern seaboard of the United States, but along that path, and not right up against and takes that water into the British Isles, the Channel, the Irish Sea, even the North Sea, and keeps that water, although the North Sea is exceptionally chilly. I mean, I don't think you want to go swimming in it. It keeps it more temperate, which then keeps Ireland and the British Isles temperate enough for people to live. That current is breaking down. The jet stream runs all the way around the planet. The jet stream, which used to be generally south of the British Isles, as we see in summer, they're getting heat that they can't deal with. People die from it. I talked about it this past summer. They had about a month of temperatures in the 80s, 90s, and 100s. And people all across the UK were dying because they didn't have air conditioning. Because the jet stream had gone so far north that African equatorial hot air was moving all the way through the British Isles. 90-degree temperatures in cities like Edinburgh and Newcastle. 100-degree temperatures in Portsmouth, London. So these climate change is not just simply it doesn't snow like it used to. That's a part of it. But this very complex system of planetary climate, it's all connected. And we, every single day, we only make it worse. As we continue to get more and more energy from clean sources, the rate at which we make it worse becomes a bit better, but we continue to make it worse. Why are the Americans and the Brits launching airstrikes on the Houthis in the Red Sea? Because they're disrupting the flow of oil. Not food, not clothing, not building materials, not even blood or organs. Oil. The American armed forces and our budget being blown to protect the oil companies more. Still, again, the same fossil fuels that are destroying the habitability of the planet, period. So that happened this week. Randall mentions that in the great, the Santa Fe Railroad is using solar to power signaling, train signaling, and have done so since the 60s. Yep. I would even give you a more simple explanation, even though Randall's fact is correct, 100%. Very, very simple idea. Today, even as windy and genuinely cold as it is here in the Lehigh Valley, the sun was out brilliantly today. So in the living dining room that we have here in our small townhouse, we have the shades all the way up. The windows are not covered at all. It got up to 70 degrees in the living room today. The heat didn't have to run because the sun warmed the room. As soon as the sun went down, got quite chilly again. What a terribly, terribly simple explanation and example of solar energy. Open the shades in the winter when it is sunny and clear. Free heat, everybody. You get free heat. Why do you pull the shades and close the curtains in summer when the sun is at its strongest? Because it gets too hot. Simplest example of solar energy. So what? Sun produces, uses even really, as much energy as the entire planet consumes in a year every hour. In fact, it might even be every minute. So think about that. The sun outputs enough energy every hour to cover the amount of energy that the Earth outputs every year. And yet we're not using this? Or certainly not using it like we should. When the Chinese government goes to these smaller rural villages all across the African continent to gain mining rights, essentially, for lithium, gold, uranium. They gain the favor of the local populations by providing them services they never had. They help them drill for water, they build them roads, and they bring them electricity. And what kind of electricity do they bring them? Solar. So we know what to do. We simply have to have the guts to do it. Randall mentions the deniers that said a best. Yeah, you know what? This is an excellent point. My God, you're on a roll tonight, my friend. The deniers that said asbestos didn't cause lung cancer, including the federal government, goes back to the 1930s. This racket was covered up by ship manufacturers in the U.S. Navy up into the 60s. Correct. Can't add anything to it. Correct. But yeah. So that happened this week. Major climate news. 7 p.m. entering the second hour of the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 14th of January, 2024. 2024. The Iowa caucuses are tomorrow night. Tune in and let's see if there are any surprises. And quite frankly, I'm not expecting any. But tune in and let's see what happens. Wherever you are on Facebook, including the that's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. 104 plus places. And we have shared the program. And, you know, at the end or toward the end of the group sharing that I was trying to do, I got blocked again. That has not happened in a few weeks, in all fairness to Facebook. And it looks like my block is over. So let me get this out to a couple of places. I think I got almost everybody. I don't think I missed many. But the almost 110 places that we've shared the program, wherever you might be, groups, both large, small, public, private, national pages, global pages, thank you for allowing us to be there and to be part of your corner of the Facebook world. We could not do it without you. Please, always, you can come over to that other side of information right this second and watch us live, comment, ask your questions. You can come to my Facebook page, Jeff Kennedy, your humble presenter and host, The Face Made For Radio. And you can come and comment as Randall has been doing throughout the evening. We will take your comments and questions. I will keep going as long as I can. I got a gut feeling it's only going to be about 8 o'clock because I can't keep any air in my lungs right now. It's uncomfortable. I can't quite understand what's happening. I do know what's happening. It's lingering leftover COVID stuff. It's asthma. Probably should have hit the inhaler before I started the show. Hot101.net. Our name is our web address. Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and the TuneIn Radio app for all other types of devices, because the TuneIn Radio app works on every kind of operating system that I'm aware of. You can always correct me if I'm wrong. Apple App Store for Apple devices, Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn Radio app. And you can listen to hot101.net. And you should be, darn it. And you should be. As I said at the top, I know you might think that some of the music really isn't your style. Give it a try. The artistry with which it is mixed and played is really something to behold. Maybe you'll find something you like. You know what? Maybe you might not. Maybe you'll try it and you're like, nope, I was right. I really don't like this. But there are a variety of musical types of DJs, and some go old school. Some go, they did a Motown night one night. They've done 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's not just all EDM and thumpy dance music. Although if that is your gig, you're going to find it, and it's going to be brilliant. Check it out, hot101.net, 24/7, all around the globe. Hot101.net is one of the originals, one of the originators, keystones, foundational blocks of global internet radio, and you should be checking it out. And of course, TCP. And I forgot to mention our sponsor, which I did somewhat purposefully. Wink, wink. PayGive app. PayGive is a financial transaction app, just like so many others that you are aware of. When you use the PayGive app, you have the opportunity to tell PayGive to take a percentage of the exchange fee, if you will, the fee that they charge you, and you can send that to the charity or even political candidate of your choice, animal charities, children's charities, veterans charities, health-related charities like the American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, and on and on and on. The PayGive app, when you buy things, you have to pay for it. Why not give while you do it? 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Let's get back to the Facebook page, if you will, see what else is up that we can talk about. Very interesting. Tomorrow night at 6:30, the Montgomery County Democratic Committee is hosting a forum for the folks who want to be the Democratic nominee to be Pennsylvania's next Attorney General. Why is that such a big deal? The Attorney General is probably the chief legal officer that determines election law. So if Pennsylvania doesn't want to be, well, they would be elected this fall, but if we want to protect elections in this Commonwealth, it's one of these folks who are going to have to do it. Posted earlier in the day a section from the book by Tom Hartman called The Hidden History of Monopolies. It's a free excerpt from the book. Tom Hartman, after he writes these books and sells them for, I think, Hidden History of Monopolies might be 2 years old now. He begins to post them online in bits. So really you get the whole book for nothing, which is pretty cool. In the particular chapter that we posted for you this week is called Commons versus Private. Reagan's quote-unquote starve the beast strategy has been used for nearly 50 years. That would show you that the book is a few years old. It's been, well, no, it is 40 years, be 40, 43. Yeah, it is coming up on 50 years because Reaganism really, the myth of trickle down started before Reagan. Nixon had a part of that too. But it really got its sea legs under Reagan, obviously. Reagan's starve the beast strategy began or has been used for nearly 40 years to shrink government until it no longer works well. And then Republicans point to that failure to justify the privatization of government. Now, we had something very similar in our own humble township of Lower Saucon, where a Republican, dare I say fascist Republican majority was voted out. 3 of our township council seats were up for election. Democrats swept them and now control council. The last meeting where the Republicans were in the majority, the township has a rainy day fund, if you will. It has a savings account, the same way most people would and should, of about $9 million. It's not even enough to fund township government for a year, but it is there. It used to be higher before the fascist Republicans took over and began borrowing it and spending it. So what we have here in our own little township is kind of a double whammy. We have a very blatant example of Jude Wanniski's, I always say his last name right. I think I said it wrong again. I always kind of butcher it. Wisniewski or Winniewski's to Santa Claus theory. But we also have we have these fallacies, these lies that Republicans still tell. The two Santa Claus theory is actually quite simple. When Republicans are in power, Republicans kind of look at Democrats as Santa Claus. We give tax cuts to poor people. We help provide jobs. We give food to people. We give education to people. We build roads and water systems and electrical systems. All things Republicans hate. Well, the Chicago School of Economics and Wisniewski himself came up with this kind of economic theory or strategy, really, called the two Santa Claus theory. That we need to take Santa Claus away from Democrats. So how do Republicans do this? Well, when they're in power, they cut taxes. Now, they cut taxes on billionaires, but you throw a percent or two, 0.5%, few bucks, $1, $2 a week to the rest of the country, and they're happy to have it. And you spend. You spend. Borrow, beg, borrow, steal, whatever you have to do, you spend. And you spend on things like defense and defense and defense. And look, defense spending can be an economic boost, but it's a giveaway. So then when you lose power as Republicans and the Democrats take power over again, now and when you're a Republican and you're in power, we don't care about deficits. We don't complain about that. We don't complain that tax revenue is down because we gave huge tax cuts to billionaires. We don't complain, and corporations, and we don't complain about any of that stuff. We just cut taxes and we spend money like it's going out of style. George W. Bush created an entire new department of government, the Homeland Security Department. So when Democrats then are in power, Republicans then try to shoot Santa Claus. That's when they start bitching about deficits and too much spending. And what's interesting is the answer to everything is always a tax cut for rich people and for corporations. That's always the answer to everything. Slow economy, cut taxes. Roaring economy, cut taxes. Tax revenue is up because the economy is doing well, cut taxes. Recession, cut taxes. And it can't work for both. It can't be both. That's like saying starving, eat more. Bloated, dying of heart disease, eat more. It doesn't work. And we had that here in our own little township. On their last meeting in power, the fascist Republicans cut taxes. And when the town manager and budget director said, you are going to leave a hole in the budget, there's not enough revenue to pay for it, they voted to simply take the money out of the savings account. Play Santa Claus. And then this past week, the new Democratic majority began the process of reversing all of that and not raising taxes, not even a dime, but returning the taxes to where they were before so that the revenue pays for the expenditure. I thought that used to be called fiscal responsibility, something that Republicans like to talk about, but do none of. So they wanted to shoot Santa, except the new majority is a little bit too smart for that. And this goes back to monopolies as well. This goes back to the general principle of destroy government. Do everything you can to starve government of money, of resources, and then bitch about how well it doesn't work. And then the answer, just like tax cuts, the answer to everything is privatization, which always costs more because governments do not have a profit motive. Corporations do. So check out that excerpt from Tom Hartman's Hidden History of Monopolies. A day ago, this was shared to our page by Gary Brown. A Moms for Liberty school board member was arrested for shoplifting from Target. So what does this tell us? If anything, I think it says a lot. But what does it tell us? It tells us that, and I don't think this is a leap. I don't think this is an extrapolation. I don't think this is a single example. What it tells you is that the Moms for Liberty movement is entirely bull. It is complete crap. And that the people involved in it, or just as, or in many, many cases, infinitely more depraved than the people that they are always hurling stones at. This woman's a thief. As she sits on a school board banning books, telling parents that Democrats are trying to turn their children into homosexuals. Meanwhile, she's shoplifting from Target. The national head of Moms, who was exposed just recently for having an ongoing three-way relationship with her husband and another woman, which, by the way, is entirely her business. Completely and entirely her business. If all three of them are consenting and they're not hurting anybody, then it's none of my business. Remember when Republicans used to try to tell you the government should stay out of the bedroom? Remember those good old days? So this woman's carrying on an ongoing three-way relationship at the same time she's accusing Democrats, progressives, liberals of grooming children to be sexual perverts. Now, let me be clear. I don't think the woman is a pervert in any way, shape, or form. Again, what she does in the privacy of her own bedroom is up to her. But don't go out and preach to everybody else that what they are doing is wrong when you're doing it yourself. That's very simple. That's a very, very simple concept. But it shows you who these people are. They're not genuinely exercised or upset at homosexuality or trans kids or liberal policies or any of it. They simply use it to rile people up for the purpose of destroying public education and making it a private, for-profit system. All the stones that they hurl at folks like me and George and Randall and Democrats and progressives and liberals everywhere in this country, they're doing it all themselves behind closed doors. Does the former head of Moms having the three-way, does she genuinely think that other people having three-way relationships are somehow dirty and depraved? She damn well better not, certainly when she's doing it herself. Does she care, really, ultimately? No. But boy, it gets an awful lot of people riled up. And then they're willing to donate money to you. And then you don't have to work anymore. And then you can run for office and you get a platform. Meanwhile, you're doing everything that you are lambasting everybody else for doing. These movements are not about real change. I have no doubt that in the Moms for Liberty movement, there are genuinely committed people. Christians who are celibate except for the purpose of reproduction, all the way down the line. I have no doubt that there are genuinely committed members of Moms for Liberty everywhere in this country that believe in their heart that they are saving children. I guarantee it. Point is that the people running it, the ones accusing anyone who doesn't agree with them of doing this, and this, they're all doing it themselves. They're no different than any of the rest of us. They're simply using these things and the sheep that are willing to follow them for money and power and profit. That's what that story tells you. And it's happening every day. Every day. And it's happening in so many different facets. It's not just moms. It's the oil industry. There's an oil industry executive somewhere in this country who has an electric car. I guarantee it. Or solar panels on their roof. There are tobacco company executives, managers, middle managers who don't smoke because they know it'll kill them. Let's scan back a little bit more. Our dear friend and former guest of the program, and I hope will be a guest again sometime on our program, Brad Kirsch. I hope you remember his appearance here. I think it was in the last spring, if I remember correctly. Posted a meme earlier that we shared earlier this week. The simple truth is our Constitution requires that we secure it for our children's future. Failing to do so ends their freedom. He's 100% correct. I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think it's hyperbole. I don't think anything of the sort to say that if Mr. Trump were to win re-election of sorts, it would be a second term. And by the way, he would be limited by the Constitution, the one that he wants to suspend. But if he were to win a re-election of sorts, I don't think it's hyperbolic to think or to believe or to postulate that that'll be the last election that we have in this country, at least for president. And Brad makes that point. Randall mentions that don't forget that the husband of the woman from Moms having the three-way relationship, he was the head of the Republican Party in Florida and was voted out by the executive committee of the Florida Republican Party. As they throw stones, their own houses are full of rocks. I posted something from the president, the real one. Country only has one at a time. From President Biden that as of today, now I posted this 2 days ago, so that would have been Friday. As of today, Friday, the IRS has collected over $500 million in unpaid taxes from 1,600 millionaires using resources, the additional monies given to the IRS to hire more agents that was provided in the Inflation Reduction Act. Interestingly, in the government funding deal that Speaker Johnson has said that he will uphold, despite threats to vacate the speaker's chair again from some of the complete anarchists and fascists on the right, that spending deal, that government funding deal, cuts money to the IRS Because Republicans don't want millionaires to pay taxes, because it's the millionaires and the billionaires that own them. Why did President Biden and Democrats provide all of that extra money to the IRS? Because they went looking for the money. Money that would have paid for itself with the additional income coming in, because now the IRS actually has the agents to chase the people who are dodging taxes. And isn't it ironic that it's always the people with the most money dodging taxes the most? No, those billions are mine, not yours, but your money's mine. That really has become a philosophy of the rich. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. I had told you last week, one of our overriding themes for the year, for 2024, was going to be the questions, the series of questions. Is this all that we are? Are we no better than this? Do we not deserve better than this? Well, here's one place where those questions are appropriate yet again. As an American society, as a nation, as a people, are we not better than the billionaires? What's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. Quite frankly, I'm sick of the billionaires stealing from me. Are we no better than this? We are. We simply have to have the guts to do it. We are better than this. Truly, we're better than this. We have to be. We have to be. 3 people in the nation having as much wealth as the bottom 60% of Americans is not good for democracy. Only democracy solves that problem. Only. Only democracy. Period. Fascism doesn't cure that problem. It does not, and it will not. Because those are the fascists. They're certainly not going to discipline themselves. They're the ones that got us here. It's not going to take only democracy. Only democracy. Only the idea and the ideal that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg have the same number of votes as I do. 1. The idea that their money somehow makes them better, smarter, more worthy than I is anti-democratic. Small d democratic. That's a fascist wealth doctrine philosophy. It is anti-Christian. Hell, it's anti any faith of any substance. But anyway, let me get back to the page. Got about a half hour left. We'll try to take you to 8 if we can. I do want to talk about this. Thank goodness. Oh, thank God I scrolled on this. Tomorrow's Martin Luther King Day as well, which makes me think that I have the wrong day for the caucuses. Gosh, I should Google that fast. George, can you Google that quick? The damn day of the caucuses. Maybe it is Tuesday now. I thought it was tomorrow. I find it odd that they would be having their caucuses on Martin Luther King Day, but then again, it's Iowa. I think only about 2% of the population of Iowa is black. But that said, so I posted a really, really lovely meme in that other side of information from shared from a young lady named Jennifer. It is Dr. King in the kneeling position. And his quote that we need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice. Not in love, not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. And that is absolutely correct. And as we approach Martin Luther King Day, we need, look, the race relations component of Dr. King's teachings are obvious. They are the first things that we think about. And I think this is where history has done him a disjustice, where corporate history especially has done him a misjustice. Dr. King believed in unions. He believed in taxing the rich. He believed that we are a society, a community, an American community, that we are one population together, that when one group of us does well, we all do better. He believed in economic justice. He, very much like Bobby Kennedy, did not understand how the richest country on earth had children starving in it, had entire sections of our country with no water, electricity, schools, or doctors. This is the lost part section of his message. But it can't be lost and forgotten anymore. Obviously, Dr. King's work on race is always going to be one of or the very first thing that we will think of. But his economic justice message was not just for Black folk, but for all Americans. He talked often about poor whites who were being exploited by corporations, by them being denied a fair pay rate, denied health benefits, and denied unionization. We simply cannot forget that part of his message. We cannot. It's too damn important. Obviously, the race message is what we think of first and probably always will. But again, corporate history has done a real misjustice to Dr. King. He was an economic justice warrior equally as well. He wanted to end the Vietnam War and the money that we were wasting there. He believed in the Great Society programs, wars on poverty. He believed in unions. We can't forget that part of the message. Randall, go ahead, my friend. You've been very patient, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just sorry somebody else calls in. Yeah, I get really.
Hey, you're sorry. What the hell? I'm sitting here talking to myself.
I know, and I'm glad you're talking.
And let me, George corrected me as usual. It looks like the caucus is actually tomorrow, which is, says a lot about Iowa that they would have a political caucus on Martin Luther King.
It is.
Jesus.
Oh, you've been right. The whole show is tomorrow. Yes, Monday, Martin Luther King Day, is the Iowa caucus for the Republican Party. Yeah, And yeah, there's only 2% of Black Americans
Yeah, I think,
in Iowa, and they're
right. The
they-
black population of Iowa, I think, is only 2% of its total
that's
population,
it.
if I'm correct.
I just said that. I
Right,
just
right.
said that. Only 2% of Black Americans live in Iowa, and I think with all the slaughterhouses and all the corporate ranches, farms for pigs, cattle, etc. I think Hispanics up to 10% in Iowa population, and what that means is the rest is white, and yeah, Iowa's a very conservative state in the traditional Midwest uh, of America. Anyway, getting back to Martin Luther King. Yes, thank you, Jeff, number one, for calling out that his economic plans were for all people. Black, brown, yellow, polka dot, whatever.
Yeah.
And, Bobby Kennedy, when he was running for president in the 1968 presidential election against Dump the Hump. Yeah, I was in high school, and I was against the war, and I wore my when the U.S. Supreme Court finally ruled that a student could wear a black armband and protest against the war, that yes, even minors have constitutional rights to First Amendment. And I went to a very, well, let's just say my consolidated school district, Pendelco, here in Delaware County, comprised 2 townships and a borough. At that time, were 100% white. The whole school district, a public school district, was 100% white. It was created by whites to protect whites. Yeah, it was conservative, and I can't even tell you going down the hallway on class change, just get punched in my left arm when I was wearing my black armband in protest after it was ruled by the U.S. Supreme Court that was my freedom of speech.
Right.
I can tell you the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times I got punched in my arm because my peer group supported the Vietnam, and the extreme minority of us students, white students, were against the war.
Right.
And Bobby Kennedy, getting back to Bobby Kennedy, Bobby picked up everything Martin Luther King said. And it's a shame they were both assassinated there in the spring, middle and late spring of '68.
Some might say it was a plan.
Yeah, well,
That might be a show. That might be a whole other show or series of shows. But yeah, but you get my point. It was. I don't think it was a coincidence. Let's put it that way.
Well, I don't think killing his brother was either by the CIA
Right,
or
right.
the military. And
Well, no, my point is, I think you agree with me. Not that you have to. Nobody ever has to agree with me. It's not the assassination of those 5 people, the big 3 plus the other 2, President Kennedy, Bobby, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and Malcolm X. These were not coincidences.
And it wasn't a coincidence that Ronald Reagan, being governor of California, passed some of the most stringent gun control laws in this country.
Yep.
Because the Black Panthers, who believed that people should protect themselves under the Second Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
had the ability to show up with rifles
at this California
Uh,
state capitol in Sacramento, scared the hell out of all the white lawmakers. To be
and then
fair,
and they
Democrats
have
included.
the Republicans and signed by Governor Ronald Reagan signed the most stringent gun control law in any of the 50 states up to that point.
Yep. He had Democratic help too. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. It was all racist.
Overwhelming majority of the legislature from both parties. But yes, you are right. They were the tightest gun control laws in the nation at that point, because the Black Panthers went to Sacramento with rifles on their shoulders, the same way that they encouraged black folk across the state, because they said it's the Second Amendment, it's your right, and it's legal. So defend yourself. And then as soon as they did that, scared the hell out of all the white legislators, and boom, gun control.
And yet people don't know the real history of the Black Panthers.
Yep. Yeah. And
they
actually, you made
they started in the poor communities of Black America in California.
Yep.
They started food banks.
Yes, they did.
They early childhood education.
Yep.
They started health clinics.
Yep.
All the things that everybody except the 99% in this country needs.
You made me think of something related to, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but you kind of made me think of something. Well, you didn't kind of, you made me think of something that also happened, I believe, early this week. It might have been late last week, and I may have forgotten to mention it, but you've reminded me of it. The exact day that it happened, I guess, is really not terribly relevant, but I like to get it right, and I can't remember which day it was now. But the executive director, vice president, always interesting how he never became the full president of the NRA. He was always a vice president or executive vice president, but the face, the voice, the the mold on the moldy cheese part of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre, resigned.
Yep.
Because he is facing criminal charges in the state of New York for defrauding members and for money laundering. It is a well accepted fact now, after being investigated by the FBI, who did nothing about it. But the Attorney General of the state of New York, Letitia James, is doing something about it, that the NRA funneled about $47 million of Russian money. They laundered it for them into the Trump campaign in 2016. And Mr. LaPierre took a chunk of that money for himself as a fee. He also took member dues monies, bought himself several mansions. I believe he had a private plane as well. The man who said in at the NRA convention in 2008 that if Barack Obama was elected, black suited United Nations stormtroopers were going to sweep across the country and go to every single residence and take back all the guns. I'm still waiting. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm still waiting. So this man, his trial is starting soon. So he finally stepped down. Now, he stayed vice president of the NRA under indictment because, of course, he's wealthy. We have several tiers of justice in this country. He could afford to stay out on bail because he can afford the best lawyers. If Mr. LaPierre was black, his trial, he would have been arrested, held with no bail. His trial probably would have been done and dusted in about 4 to 6 weeks, and he'd be in prison for the rest of his life. But he's not. He's a wealthy white man. So he got to stay home. His trial is, I think, 2 to 3 years in the making now. That didn't get nearly the press coverage that it deserved, that he stepped down this week. And that the NRA is damn near bankrupt. And I hope Letitia James, the Attorney General of the state of New York, continues to do the things the federal government should be doing, but doesn't have the stones to do. And that is ruin that organization. It is a lobbying arm for the weapons manufacturers, using the money of its dues paying members to promote weapons of war on streets and in schools. That's what it is now. And the executive members of it are multi-millionaires, all on the backs of the dues paying members. So you just reminded me of all that. Thank you for doing that.
Okay. I had to move down here out of the Mariner East pipeline blast zone, which when I decided to move out of the blast zone down here in Delaware County, was like 1,500 feet. And after the Democrats, after years and years, Republican rule here in Delaware County, PA, the Republicans refused to fund a what's the word I'm looking for? A scientific survey of the actual blast zone dimensions. It went from 50, when the Democrats took control finally. Here, we in Delaware County, PA, they funded that study.
Mm-hmm.
And their study, our little private study from our little citizens giving a buck here, a buck there, could only fund for just one little section of the 250-mile Mariner East pipelines across PA, down for export for profit of gas and oil companies to export to Europe to make plastic.
Right.
That's governmental study. The blast zone went to 2,500 feet on both sides of the pipeline. You're talking in this part of PA, this part of the U.S., this part of the world. We're talking about nothing but heavy suburban. There's hardly any open space left. You know what I mean? It's like hospitals and schools and shopping centers and houses. And yeah, I had to get out. We're going to be out now coming up, let's see, May. End of May, we bought our house here. It's going to be 6 years. I made sure I was out of the 1,500 foot blast zone. Because across Chester Creek in Aspen Township, where I grew up here in Delco, Delaware County, PA, I wanted to make sure I was up the hill, and I wanted to make sure I was X amount of square feet away.
Right.
I'm still out of the blast zone, but the study done by our county, funded by our county, there's a blast zone, and then there's a thermal melt burn zone. The thermal melt burn zone is, most of the houses have vinyl siding. They all melt off towards the blast zone. If you're outdoors, that particular instance, you thermal burn. So I'm out of the blast zone, but I'm in this new thermal burn zone. So I should have bought a house even further out from the Mariner East pipeline.
Let me ask you a question. And it's a sarcastic question. Let's be honest. You're a smart man. I don't need to patronize you. It's a sarcastic question. What's the blast zone on a solar panel?
There is no blast zone on a solar panel. There's blast zone on the battery that store the solar power. And even if it's in your house, it might cause a fire. If you're self-sufficient and you've got a battery housing outdoors, there is no blast zone.
Would you say that potential is anywhere equivalent to the potential of the explosion of a gas pipe?
Absolutely, absolutely not. You got to remember something, Jeff. That people don't understand, and your worldwide audience doesn't understand. When it comes to gas, compressed gas,
Mm-hmm.
why do they compress gas? Why do they compress natural gas on the big giant feeder pipelines? Why do they compress gas? The gas, the derivatives of mining, essentially for methane, i.e., natural gas.
Yeah.
But the derivatives to make flat anyway. Reason they pressurize them at a high volume is that they can transport more.
Yep.
Because instead of once you pressurize and you take down the temperature, those gases become a liquid.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes, the gases that go through the Mariner East pipeline to make plastics in Europe, those pipelines are 1,400 psi, pounds per square inch. Now, natural gas, when it's pressurized, is like 500 pounds psi, pounds per square inch, because it takes a lower temperature for the gas derivatives gases from frac to be carried through this distribution pipe, because they have to have a lower temperature to liquefy into a liquid. Whereas natural gas, it doesn't take as much pressure to liquefy it into a liquid to be transported in a gas line. And I know, all I can tell you is, Jeff, my whole working life, when I was working, I was a fire safety officer here. I was an OSHA officer there. I was a fire marshal here. I was a fire safety marshal there. I've been dealing with this stuff, emergency management here. I've been dealing with this stuff for over 50 years, going back to college in the early 70s. And that's why I made my family move. And out of the blast zone of the Mariner East pipeline. And this fracking, yeah, America is the largest. The Republicans say, pump more, pump more. We got to pump more. Oh, Biden stopped. Oh, Biden stopped them drilling in the Arctic preserve. Well, you know what? We are the biggest producer of crude oil on the whole planet. We beat Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
We beat Iran. We beat Iraq. We beat Kuwait.
And we beat Russia for natural gas as well, I believe. I think we're the largest exporter of fossil fuel products on the planet.
We are the biggest producer of crude oil. We are the biggest producer of natural gas on the planet. And people go, well, why are prices so high? Because people understand global market. If Saudi Arabia and Russia are cutting their production, because they're getting not enough money per barrel of oil.
No, they're pushing
No.
they're pushing the price up. It's supply
That's-
and demand. If you restrict the supply, demand stays level, the price goes up. But also, and we have to be honest about this, this is a failure of the Obama administration that rescinded, allowed, signed into law a rescinding of the rule that goes back to the Nixon administration that fossil fuel products produced, well, I should say oil and natural gas. We've always exported coal, always, but, and we still continue to export coal, but that allowed, you didn't, if we drilled oil in this country, it was not allowed to leave our borders. What was drilled here had to be used here. And that law, after a great amount of lobbying money being spent by the Koch brothers, got overturned in a budget deal that President Obama signed. Now, Randall is correct. We could be, and Republicans will often say this as a reason why we should drill more. We could be self-sufficient. Well, we could be, except that we export. We import oil from Saudi Arabia, but export the oil that we drill here. It makes no sense other than to keep the Saudis happy, to keep military bases on their lands, and to keep the global markets moving. Except I don't know that that's necessarily our responsibility. If a portion of our population was starving, which they are, by the way, but for the sake of this example, yet we exported more beef. We could produce enough beef to feed everybody, but exported it because it made a handful of billionaires even more money. And then to make up for the shortfall that we exported, we imported that same beef from some other country. We would say that was lunacy. Well, it's no different for oil and natural gas. That law needs to be reinstated, and I am deeply disappointed. Among the list of things that I have been disappointed about by the Biden administration, that would be one of them. If it is drilled here, it should be used here, period. And then stop exporting it or importing it, get my words twisted. Then stop importing it from the Middle East. Even John McCain said that. Go ahead, sir.
You've got probably 80% of what you just said correct, but it did it quite right. Yeah. It's illegal to export crude oil from the U.S., but it is legal to export refined crude oil products, gasoline, aviation fuel, kerosene, whatever. And that's, and you know, one of the biggest refineries we have left in this down in, I think it's Louisiana. Could be wrong. Could be. It's been bought by Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
And you know, out in Arizona,
Largest refinery in the country is owned by the Saudis. Yes.
yes, it is now. And that's that. Yes, Obama, he did that after the Tea Party took over in 2010 during his first administration. And that was a compromise to get through some things for the people here in this country. And, you know, me, I'm a lifelong Democrat.
Yep.
You know me. I've been lifelong advocate, elected local Democratic committee now for 40 years. I can't believe that. But anyway, people, compromise is hard, but you know what? I went from being a young, anti-war in my teens and college, liberal Democrat, to be now a 71-year-old progressive Democrat. And do I get heck from my local fellow Democratic committee members? Heck yes. Do I get heck from my county Democratic members? Delaware County Democratic members? Yeah. Do I get called out? Oh, you're too woke. You're too far left. Absolutely, I get called. Yeah, I'm a boomer. That going from being a liberal hippie, doing all the things we did in the 60s and 70s, to the majority of my generation now being complacent, conservative, supporting Donald Trump if he's elected or a future dictator. No, I'm not that person.
I've always thought that I'll butcher it because I won't say it. I won't. I'll get the spirit of it, but I won't say it right. That old wives' tale, really, saying at this point that, if you're what is it? If you're a Democrat when you're younger, you're not. What is it? That you're not paying attention or something, and if you're not a Republican when you're older, you're not doing something else. Is crap. It's complete crap. There was a poll released this week for those of you around the world. It was released here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that President Biden is leading Trump among folks who are 65 and older by 23 points. In fact, there was another poll released out of Iowa that states that up to 16% of caucus goers, people who plan to go to the caucuses tomorrow night to vote for either Nikki Haley or DeSantis or Christie or Ramos, any of them other than Trump. These are people who are not voting for Trump. They're voting in the caucuses for anybody but him, but are Republicans and are voting. 16% of them have said that if Trump is the nominee, they will vote for President Biden. If I was the National Democratic Committee, I might actually want Trump to be the nominee on the Republican side. If it was Nikki Haley, I'd be worried because she knows how to portray herself as normal. She's nothing but, she is nothing. She is anything but normal. She's as fascist as the rest of them. She wants to ban abortion, privatize education, privatize the commons, huge tax cuts, trickle down, the whole deal. She's as fascist as the rest. She is bought and paid for by all of them. But at least she has the ability to portray herself as normal. We all know Trump's not normal. We know DeSantis isn't normal. These are would-be dictators. In fact, Trump's already promised it.
On day one.
But Mrs. Haley at least knows how to put herself out there as quote-unquote normal. She is anything but. Anything but. There's the basket. Drop the money in it. What do you want, boys? I'm here to do what you need.
or want, not need. She's as bad as the rest of them. So I found that poll to be quite interesting, really interesting. And I think that percentage of Republicans across the country, it might not be 16%. In some of these states, it might even be 1 or 2%. But there is a measurable percentage of Republicans who support any of the other candidates in the primaries except Trump. There is a percentage of Republicans who know better. Now, I don't think that makes them correct. I don't think it makes them some sort of American heroes. I don't think it makes them Eisenhower Republicans that can be dealt with and talked to. No, I think they're just as bad as the rest of them. But at least they still think there should be some democracy. Or a democracy. I don't agree. You know, the interesting thing, when Liz Cheney went on her press tour for her book, she took very few questions about actual policy. But the occasional media member who would say, okay, you know, we talked about the book for all this time and so on and so on. What about this? What about that? What about that? Remember, she voted with Trump 96% of the time. She supported that $8+ trillion tax cut that was pushed through right in 2017. She was right there cheerleading for it. She's as fascist as the rest of them. But she actually still happens to believe that if you're eligible and legal, you should be allowed to vote. And if we lose the election, then we lose the election. It's not a high bar, really, when you think about it. It will be very interesting to see what happens tomorrow night. I expect Trump to win. The only thing is going to be who comes in second and how far behind do they come in. But Mrs. Haley, DeSantis, Haley, none of them are actually running for president. I don't know what they're running for, other than that they get to keep the money at the end. Now, the DeSantis campaign is supposedly in debt. He has spent an inordinate amount of money. Trump has not spent much money at all because he doesn't have to. Because the media continues to give him free coverage. Every time he sneezes, cameras go on. Every time he posts something on that bogus social media site he created, which is also bankrupt, by the way, they read it verbatim all over the news. He got $4 billion in free media in 2016. Because every time he sneezed, everybody covered it. They didn't do that for Bernie. They didn't do it for Mrs. Clinton.
Yep.
Every time he did something, they covered it. They're doing it again. But Haley, DeSantis, these people are not running for president. I don't know what they're running for. I really don't. At least some of them had the principles, I guess. My guess is most of them dropped because there was no money left to get out of the campaign. At least Tim Scott realized nobody wants you to be president, right? No one. Nobody thinks you would be a good one or should be one. Remember, Mr. Ramaswamy is wealthy in and of himself. He's a mega multimillionaire himself. DeSantis had more money than Trump. He spent it, but he had it. And remember, you get to keep the money at the end. If DeSantis leaves this race with $50 million in the bank, that's his money. He can keep it if he wants to. Mrs. Haley can keep it. I do think a lot of these people run. Mr. Ramaswamy is an author. He's written quite a number of books. I think he's running to sell books. Herman Cain ran to sell books. Ben Carson ran to make money and sell books. So I don't even know why some of these folks are even in the race. Now, Haley's gotten a tiny bit tougher on Trump in the last couple of weeks. DeSantis actually pushed back on him a little bit. He had the stones enough, and he deserves credit for doing it, accepting the invitation, doing an interview on Morning Joe. I missed it because I think it was at work. I think he got interviewed later in the program, but at least he showed up. But I don't even think these people are running for president. I don't know what they're running for. Do they want to be in his cabinet? Do they think they're going to be vice president? I have no idea. Usually in a campaign, in a political campaign, you draw distinctions. You draw differences between you and the other candidates. No one seems to be drawing any significant distinctions between them and Trump. And these are damn easy distinctions to draw. His administration was an absolute failure. 1 million Americans died of COVID because he did nothing. He was the only other president than Hoover to lose jobs during his administration. His 4 years was an abject failure. And yet they have barely even talked about that. The Iowa caucuses are Monday. Tuesday, he's due in court. And I think he's doing another court then again on Thursday. Sometimes, if you stepped back from it and tried to look at it from the old saying of the 50,000-foot view, if it wasn't actually happening, you would think it was comical. This fake billionaire who has built a life on his father's money, acting like a mob boss, who's done nearly nothing legally in his entire life, running in a small d Democratic campaign for the highest office in the land, governed by a constitution he wants to suspend. I mean, think about that. While under 4 separate indictments, over 91 counts in 3 jurisdictions. Just step back from that and think about that for a second. I mean, even Hollywood couldn't write that. And here we are. And he's not just the presumptive nominee of the Republicans. He's not just ahead by 5 points or 10 points. There's polls where he's ahead by 40, 30, 40, 50 points. He is. It's the Trump party. He is the Republican Party. I think Mrs. Haley's a fascist. I know DeSantis is. But they're not under indictment. They don't have 91 federal counts against them. And they barely exist in this primary. There is no Republican Party left. It is only the cult of Trump. And they are not interested in you. They are not interested in the 99%. They're not. You may disagree with the values and the principles of the Democratic Party. We can have that discussion. But some of this stuff is not up for debate. The Trump party does not give 2 shits about you. The only reason that you can still breathe in a Trump America is if you can generate wealth for a billionaire, or they have wealth that they can steal from you. If not, you might as well die. We'll just bring in Somebody will take your place. You're a spark plug. You burn out, you're a light bulb. You burn out, we unscrew you, throw you in the garbage, and plug another one in. That's Trump's America. And do you honestly think, after saying that he only wants to be a dictator for the day and that the Constitution should be suspended, you honestly think that if he were to win a second term, that would be the end of it? First off, how he's alive is a miracle. I don't even know how much formaldehyde is pumped in there. Considering that all he does is drink Diet Coke and eat McDonald's, I have no idea how this man is even still breathing. But that said, if he should happen to win a second term or steal a second term and still be alive in 2028, do you honestly think he's going to allow that election to take place? Do you think he's going to leave the White House voluntarily? And when he begins to die and he becomes so ill that he has to be hospitalized or whatever that situation might be, do you honestly think that he won't make some kind of proclamation handing off the presidency to one of his kids? He thinks medievally. He thinks dictatorship. He thinks that and he said this, I'm not creating any of this stuff out of thin air. He thinks the way that what word do they use for Kim Jong-il? Is he the prime minister or they call him president? I don't remember. That the way they pass down the leadership in North Korea is a good thing. He's talked about handing off the presidency to one of his kids, which is fundamentally unconstitutional. Oh, but we'll just suspend that. And yet he is the leader of this so-called political party by a long, long way, by a very good distance. It's not like it's even close. And it goes back to what I said last week. I strongly encourage anyone within the sound of my voice listening live, or if you listen on the recording, go to Netflix, watch the documentary Bobby Kennedy for President. It's only 5 episodes. It's 5 hours. The theme of his campaign is going to be the theme of this show for 2024. In the richest country in the world, why do we have people starving with no water, no electricity, no housing, no schooling, no opportunity to see a doctor? Why do we have that? But we can have 800 plus military bases and troops in 184 countries, but we can't feed our own population or clothe them or house them. And the only thing that fixes these problems is democracy, because fascism doesn't care if there are people who are unsheltered out freezing and dying in the streets. They don't care. They are throwaway people to them. The homeless population isn't working or generating wealth, so they don't care if they live or die. Only democracy solves these problems. Only democracy. And what was Bobby Kennedy asking us as a country and asking us as a society? Is this all that we are? Are we no better than this? And he believed that we were better than this, that we are better than this. I want to believe that we are better than this, that this is not all that we are, that we are a better country than to watch a military veteran freeze to death under an overpass, that we are better than to see tens of thousands of children of color starve and not be able to go to school. That we are better than what's happening in Iowa and Arkansas, where 12 and 13-year-old kids are now able to go work in factories. That we are better than the highest maternal death rate for Black women on the planet of the industrialized country, of the so-called first world countries. That we are better than that. That we can feed our population and still colonize the moon the way President Kennedy believed we could. It is the theme of the program. It is the theme of that documentary, and you need to watch it. These are the questions that Bobby Kennedy was asking us. The questions that even President Kennedy didn't articulate as well. Aren't we better than this? Sadly, about 30 to 40% of us don't think we are better than this. That means the other 60% of us are going to have to save the country again. Does it mean that President Biden is perfect? No. Does it mean I agreed with everything he has done or not done? No. Is the only reason you should vote for him because he's not Trump? No. But listen to what Trump is telling you. Suspend the Constitution, dictatorship, camps for Democrats. Use the Justice Department to prosecute the people who run MSNBC and CNN. Investigate and shut down journalists. Jail them. He's telling you. He's telling you exactly what's coming. You don't have to read Mein Kampf. He's reading it to you. And that's what 2024 is about. The other things that Randall and I have talked about, climate change, gas pipelines, economy, none of it solved. None of it is even discussed if that man returns to the White House. None of it. It is the end of the American experiment. He will never leave voluntarily. He will either die there or stay there till he dies. Is that who we are? Are we no better than this? Do we not deserve, as a population, as a nation, as a society, to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, house ourselves, go to school, see a doctor? We do. And we can have all those things. Again. But the 3 richest people in the country are going to have to pay. We know how to solve these problems because we've done it before. And we can do it again. But the questions that Bobby Kennedy was asking us, we have to answer first. How do these things happen? These series of things happen in the so-called richest country on earth? And are we no better than this? Do we not deserve better? Of course we do. These are the questions he was asking. And we do know the answers. We simply have to have the stones to put them back in place. What's your final thoughts, sir? Because I think we might wrap up.
You know what? It's only 8:23. Now I can talk till 9, Jeff, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
You know? Well, yes, I can. And there's so many. Uh, I hate being 71 and getting brain farts. There's so many things you talked about that I wanted to comment on, but I couldn't because you went on other things. But the bottom line is, yeah, number one thought. We've got to say democracy. It doesn't matter if it's a school board, if it's electing a local dog catcher, U.S. Congress, president. We are a republic form of government. So you've got to quit saying democracy. You've got to say citizen voting for a republic. Citizens voting for a republic.
It's a very Republican line.
No, again, from local through state, local to county, state to federal, it's a republic form of government. We elect representatives from the local, our school board, our counties, our states, U.S. Congress, U.S. President to represent us. We don't directly vote for any laws. If we were a democracy, we would vote everything as a law.
No, that's the definition of direct democracy.
All right, we're getting into semantics here.
No, it's not semantics. It's a fact.
Okay,
This is what Rick
But
said. This is what
we are a democracy republic.
we are a democratic republic. We vote for representatives. If we cannot vote anymore, democracy goes away with it. Simply because we are not an Athenian direct democracy where we vote on every piece of legislation and whether we're going to put a new garbage can on the corner doesn't mean it's not democracy. When the voting goes away, so does the democracy with it. The representatives that are there are irrelevant. This is what Mussolini did. They had a representative form of government too. The largest corporation in every parliamentary district became the new representatives. Nobody voted for them. Mussolini put them there. So they still had a republic, but certainly wasn't a democratic republic.
They had a fascist, quote, republic, unquote. That's not what I'm talking about. Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Number one. We give up the ideal of democracy to a fascist elected official. We will destroy our republic style of government. I absolutely agree with that.
How are you feeling? I neglected to ask you how you've been feeling.
I went way over on my rescue inhalers tonight. That's why I didn't call you much earlier. But I'm okay now. You have asthma. I feel 80. God forbid. Well, I have sleep apnea too, but that's another thing.
Yeah.
And many other
They're related, though, believe it or not. They are related.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm just like, I'm staying home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Times I go out, I wear a mask and have since the beginning of the pandemic, and I've never got COVID, and I'm up on my shot, and yeah, I don't what you want to think. Well, I hope if I'm feeling and do another rapid test, it says I'm positive, I go to my doctor and get that drug within 5 days that you and your wife are.
Yeah, we missed it. You're right.
couldn't because you waited too long. So I hope that would happen with this new strain, yeah, I mean, worse than earlier strains, but it is very, very, very more vibrant to be passed from one person to another. And, yeah, it's winter here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Hmm.
So people out there in Radioland on 101.net and all the Facebook pages that Jeff goes to, hey, get your vaccinations, whether it's flu, whether it's COVID, whether it's RSV, especially if you're over 65 like I am. Like, get real, folks. It's winter. It's time for indoor activities. It's time for disease.
Correct.
Anyway, Jeff, like I said, you don't have to talk. I took my inhaler.
No, I want to get to something that you actually reminded me of because I have the article open. You take care of yourself this week. Stay warm. It is going to be chilly this week. Teens at night, 30s during the day.
Those big waves that are going around the planet in the Northern Hemisphere from the Arctic blast, those waves going south, up, and south, and up. Yeah, it's going to be brutal this week.
Yep.
And I don't know what Andrew and I are going to do here. Brooke, Delaware.
Wrap yourself up in a blanket, cuddle up, and ride it out. Looks like it's only going to be for, about a week, and then
Her back again, and of course, my lower back, my middle, and my neck, all the herniated disc. I can't shovel snow anymore. People out there in Northern Hemisphere, if you got people that you know that are hurt physically, if you know people out there that are elderly, please, if it snows, if there's ice, go out and help your neighbor.
Mhm.
Please.
You have a good week. Talk to you next week.
Oh, you're throwing me off, huh?
Yep. I'm reading a couple more stories and then we're going to bed.
All right. Hey, I could talk to it ends at 9, or we could go over because Sergeant Mack in the village.
Yeah, well, we'll have some news about some additional programming coming up, so stay tuned.
When you gonna have me on, Jeff?
You're on every week.
No, that's what I'm talking about. When you gonna have the Warren Wilson college crew on? Like me and Kevin.
Kevin has an open invitation, although I haven't talked to him in a while. We have a guest set up for next week. I'll tell you that more toward the end of the program. After that would take us to Championship Sunday, and then there's a week off, and then the Super Bowl, and we'll figure it out.
Since you're having a show this year about politics here in the U.S., you should have me and Kevin on the Zoom.
Well, I'll consider that. It's not nobody. You don't have to have some special qualification to be a guest on this program. You just have to be willing. You do not have to have some special qualification to be a guest on this program. You simply have to be willing. I'm just running out of patience asking people.
But never invited? Sergeant Mack has been inviting me for almost a year. I just say.
Well, you should. I told you should.
Yeah, I know you did. And I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to until it's front.
One of the great strengths
of a program like that is how different you and he are fundamentally different people. And that's a good thing. It's a strength. It's good for folks of very different backgrounds to talk to each other. And not even necessarily agree, but to talk to each other. I told you last week or whenever it was that you asked me about it, you should do it. Why not? It's fun. Go for it.
I'm do it. I'm not going to do it till it gets to late spring because I'm going to do it outside. I don't have, I don't have a background. I'm going to have to borrow my wife's or one of my daughter's computers to do it by Zoom. Yeah, I'm going to do it, but that's not the point. The point is, as long as you know, why haven't you never invited me on your show?
Because you call in every week.
Oh,
we get
should
a chance.
I'm like,
We get a
call
chance to talk. We get a chance to talk and share your stories, share your opinions, share your policy point of views. We get to agree and disagree for a portion of our time on the air every week.
whatever. Okay. Here's a future show that you get me, you get Kevin Fredericks, and you get one of my mentors from college, an older college, Bill Galvin, who was a pacifist against the war, who went to Princeton Theological Seminary because we were all Presbyterian. And he graduated with his master's from Princeton. He's never been an ordained minister anywhere. He's carried his whole lifetime as a pacifist against the war, from Reagan on to today, what's going on in the Middle East, even Ukraine. I support a self-defense. But Bill Galvin from Warren Wilson College, we all graduate from, is a great person to also reach out to have the three of us on and discuss whatever topic that week we want to discuss.
Just send me his name when you get time. No rush. I will find him and contact him.
I'll do that Facebook PM.
That would be wonderful. I would deeply appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, I'll do that. All right, well, listen. Until we talk again, or until I talk to you on private messenger, you and Kristen, please get better and better and better. Long-term COVID. God, I remember in 2021 when COVID went through everybody, including my family here, when I lived in the basement with the four-step air purifier, and the last was UV light, and I had directly on my face the whole time. Everybody, my grandchildren, my children, my wife had COVID on that Delta variant.
Yes.
I never got COVID, but it got spiritual, man. I would have died by then. But anyway, hey, love you and love
Will you, like I said, you take care of yourself this week. Stay warm, stay inside, wrap a blanket around, get a good book, watch TV, start a fire, whatever it is you need to do. Just, it's only about a week, and then it looks like we go back to 40s and 50s and we'll be fine. So just hang in there for the week, stay warm and stay healthy.
Yeah. Hey, love you, brother.
You as well. You just take care of yourself, okay?
Yeah, and you two take care of yourselves. And George, thank you for joining us. Love you, brother.
All right,
And,
love you, my friend. You take care now.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. I do actually want to read an article that Randall was kind enough to remind me about as we wrap up. Let's move a little bit out of politics. And it is an article from the BBC that I posted earlier this week. Randall had reminded me of it in the chat. We've done 2.5 hours of politics. As we come toward the close of the program, let's do something a little different. Let's do a science story. I told you in the beginning of the program at the header that there was science, real science news this week. And among that science, anthropological news. And this is an article from the BBC that I posted. I want to say, that was 2 days ago too. I thought it was further than that, but that's okay. So this is from the BBC from 2 days ago, from Friday as well. A huge ancient city has been found in the Amazon rainforest, hidden for thousands of years by lush vegetation. The discovery changes what we know about the history of people living in the Amazon. Take that in. That's a really important sentence. This discovery changes what we know about the history of people living in the Amazon. The houses and plazas of the Upano area in eastern Ecuador were connected by an astounding network of roads and canals. We generally, in traditional history, credit the Romans for having a vast road and canal network. Well, here's one thousands of years earlier. The area lies in the shadow of a volcano that created rich local soils, but also may have led to the destruction of the society. Those pesky volcanoes, they giveth and they taketh away. While we knew about cities in the highlands of South America like Machu Picchu and Peru, it was believed that people only lived nomadically or in tiny settlements. It has changed the face of human history. Discoveries like this tend to get little to no press attention. And I don't think it's by accident that the places that they do get press attention are places like the BBC. I can't be 100% sure because I haven't watched MSNBC 24/7 for the last 2 days after the BBC published this article, but it would be my guess that they have not done a story on this. But when a discovery changes the entire known human history of a region, if not all of human history, and to me, this discovery changes all of human history because of the way that peoples in the Amazon were perceived as being cannibals and nomads and Neanderthalish, not perhaps in DNA and appearance, but in the way that they lived. No, they had cities and roads and canals. It changes human history. And because of the times that we are in, sadly, I think is a contributing factor, we don't talk about these things. This should have been news. It should have been worthy of at least a couple minutes every few hours or so on MSNBC instead of the talking heads and the infotainment And that's real news. And so is this. Another article from the BBC from Friday. This is something that I had mentioned earlier. I think George posted the article in the chat. And it was this picture that I was trying to get to him, but I don't think I'll be able to do it in time before we wrap up. But so this is also from the BBC from Friday. Scientists at the University of Central Lancashire, and by the way, that's how you say it if you're reading it. It's Lancashire. It's not Lancashire, it's Lancashire. Have discovered a gigantic ring-shaped structure in space. Now, before we get excited that this is some sort of artificial structure, it is not. Hang on. It is 1.3. I guessed I was only off a little bit when I guessed earlier. It is 1.3 billion light years in diameter and appears to be roughly 15 times the size of the moon in the night sky as seen from Earth. So let's remember what that means. It doesn't mean that it's as close as the moon or that 1.3 billion light years is obviously larger than the moon. It's all about distance and perspective. When we look at the size of the moon, this ring-like structure is 15 times the size of the way we visualize the moon from Earth. Named the Big Ring by astronomers, it is made up of galaxies and galaxy clusters. They say that it is so big, it challenges our understanding of the universe. It cannot be seen with the naked eye. It is really distant, and identifying all the galaxies that make up the biggest structure has taken a lot of time and computing power. Such large structures should not exist, according to one of the guiding principles of astronomy called the cosmological principle. This states that all matter is spread smoothly across the universe. Although stars, planets, and galaxies are huge clumps of matter in our eyes, in the context of the size of the universe, they are insignificant. And the theory is that much bigger patches of matter should not form. So right there, in just a couple minutes, we have read two stories. One that completely changes, or maybe not completely, that changes one of the basic principles of cosmology or astronomy, and one that changes the history as we knew it of humans on this planet. This is why sometimes I will tell you that there is way more going on than just American politics. There's an entire planet out there, a solar system, a galaxy, a universe. And let's remember these two facts, especially as it reflects itself on this particular article. There are as many, astronomers will tell you, there are as many stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, which is a medium-sized spiral galaxy. It is not a particularly unique or extraordinary galaxy. We are a medium-sized spiral. There are many stars there are as many stars in the galaxy as there are grains of sand on Earth. I got this quote from I think this comes from Carl Sagan. And there are as many galaxies in the universe as there are grains of sand on Earth. And as many as 3/4 of those stars, both in our galaxy and throughout the universe, have planets. Doesn't mean that they are all habitable. Doesn't mean that any of them are habitable, even though we've already found habitable planets. But my point is, a star might have a planet around it. It might have 2, 3, 5, 10.
but that 75% of all the stars in the universe are thought to have planets around them. We are not alone. And that's not some crazy conspiracy theory to end the program on. In fact, I would very much like to have a program to talk about such things. Just take a break from politics where we can talk about, alien life and the ancient astronaut theory and things like that. But we're not alone here. And I think sometimes that we could possibly learn a bit more about ourselves if we did think about some things like that we're not alone. So I ask you to think about that. I also posted, this will be the last thing I do tonight. We'll say hi to George quickly before we say goodnight. Facebook has this thing where they'll give you memories, hey, you posted this 5 years ago today, or you posted, whatever it might be. This one was my 5th. I posted it 5 years ago. This goes back to the 11th, which is Thursday. I originally posted it in 2019 during the Trump regime. And it was President Franklin Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights. I have talked about this before, probably too many times. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, are largely political rights. Free speech, petition your government for redress, assembly, press, religion, trial by jury, no double jeopardy. You can't be forced to house troops in your home, and on and on and on. President Roosevelt, during the Great Depression, the Republican Great Depression, and the subsequent New Deal that got us out of it, formulated a second Bill of Rights, what he called an Economic Bill of Rights. These were meant to be constitutional rights, rights guaranteed to you and protected for you by the Constitution of the United States. He wanted the Constitution of the United States amended to include the second 10, I think it's 10, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, I have 8 in front of me. George's has 6, but I don't know if that's because it didn't fit on screen or what. But the one I posted in this, Facebook provided memory of me has 8. But he wanted these enshrined in the Constitution so that you would be protected, they would be guaranteed you by the Constitution, and that the Constitution would protect you surrounding these things. And this is not the same graphic that George has up. George's, the one I had sent to George that he has been kind enough to post, is simplified. I will read you the one that I shared again on Facebook. Because for whatever, I have my glasses on, so I can read it. But so the one that George had put up is correct. It's just much shorter. I'm going to read you the longer one. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights, proposed on January 11th, 1944. So I can't do that math in my head. Isn't that terrible? Gosh, that's terrible. 2024 minus 1944. 80 years ago. 80 years ago. And we still haven't managed to do this as a country. The 80th anniversary of President Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights. Every American is entitled to the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of this nation. Guarantee you a job. Guaranteed in the Constitution, a job.
The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. Think about that. I haven't had a vacation in a real proper, like, whole week vacation in probably 5 years. Now, I was home on lockdown like you. That wasn't exactly vacation, but you get my point. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living. Individual family farmers farming not just to feed themselves, but to earn enough money to live. Not being run out, bought out by huge factory farms. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies, both at home and abroad. Think about that one. There are basically only 3 cell phone companies in the country. There's only 6 major banks. There are 5 major airlines. Freedom from a monopoly. Freedom from a small businessman to be crushed by a monopoly. The right of every family to a decent home. There was no homeless problem in this country before Reagan emptied out the government-funded mental institutions because rich people didn't want to pay for them anymore. And in return for their money and support, he promised to cut their taxes, and he sure as hell did. And part of that reduction of government spending was emptying the mental institutions. And then we got ourselves a homeless problem. But again, fascists don't care about such things. The mentally ill are not generating wealth, and they have no wealth to be extracted. So throw them on the streets and let them die. And that's exactly what was done and continues to happen to this day. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to health care. When Bernie Sanders said that Americans should have a right to health care, that health care is not a for-profit business, but a human right, people laughed at it. President Roosevelt said it 80 years ago. The Germans talked about a national healthcare system as early as the late 1800s. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. President Roosevelt tells us that a person cannot be truly free when they are constantly living with the fear of poverty. And he's right. And finally, the right to a good education. As Moms for Liberty, the DeVos family, and countless others tried to destroy public education in this country to make it profitable, President Roosevelt wanted to guarantee you an education, a good education. George, do you have anything that you'd like to throw in before we say goodnight to everybody for this week?
No, not really. I was going to make a comment, but I won't.
We'll make a comment.
About about the government emptying out the mental institutions.
Yeah. Well,
I was not gonna put that in
now I
there.
see
No,
it.
I was
Okay.
not
Yeah,
gonna
you're
say
right.
that.
We'll hang on. No, they existed before that, but yeah, I get it. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you a quick announcement before we wrap up about our guest next week, because we do have, I'm pretty certain it's set in stone. I simply don't know, currently do not know what time he will be joining us, but I believe that we're set for the 21st, a week from today. As I mentioned during the program, I've implored you all to go to Netflix and watch Bobby Kennedy for President. Watch the documentary. In that documentary is a gentleman who ended up working as a regional coordinator on the Kennedy campaign. He knew Bobby Kennedy. And in fact, it's very, very, there's no real spoilers here, but go watch it anyway. When he first appears in the documentary, he tells how his first time he met Bobby Kennedy, he was completely unimpressed and thought to himself, who is this punky little guy? He'll never make it. And he ended up working for Bobby Kennedy. Again, as a regional coordinator on his presidential campaign. Gentleman's name is William Arnone. He's in the documentary. He was a young guy working for Bobby Kennedy's presidential campaign. He knew Bobby Kennedy. And I thought, since we have made the theme of of Bobby Kennedy's presidential campaign and largely his political life, certainly post-assassination, post-president's assassination, that it would be really lovely to have him on. And I have to say, I despise searching for guests. I ask so many people to be on this program, people who would benefit from being on this program, and just won't come. And then I send an email to Mr. Arnone. He's so kind enough to write back and says, sure, why not? So to all the other folks who are afraid to come on this program, it ain't that hard. It just isn't. When Joe Walsh and William Arnone will come on this program, I think, we must be doing something right. So the rest of you who keep ignoring me and ignoring the invitation, but that's our guest next week. So it's 9:01. No new villains view tonight. Back to programming, back to the awesome music on Hot 101. For everyone on Facebook, thank you for allowing us to be part of your Facebook world. Every single individual, groups, both large, small, public, private, the pages, all of it. If you missed any of the program, as soon as I click off, that's it. It's right on YouTube and it stays there. YouTube, one of the greatest things that we've done with Restream is that George doesn't have to send the program over to YouTube anymore. He doesn't have to convert it, send it over there. It's just there now. YouTube.com/that other side of information. All of our recorded programs are there. All of them. If you missed any of it live, best place to go is YouTube. You can catch up from there. For everyone at TCP, for everyone at hot101.net, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, and all of the other DJs in our hot101.net family, for Lynn and George, for April, the newest Lehigh County, Pennsylvania County Commissioner, April Riddick, for Daisy the dog, Guy the cat, and Kristen downstairs. I am Jeff Kennedy. We've done just about all the damage we can do for 1 week. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Our scheduled guest is William Arnone. And Randall made a very, very good point right there at the end. Please take care of yourselves and each other. If you have neighbors who are struggling with the cold, who can't come out in the cold, if we get snow and they need shoveling, anything like that, take care of each other. We are a community. We are a society. We are one nation. We are not just a rogue, random group of rugged individuals. We are a family. We are an American family. Let's take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Jeff Kennedy, and we'll see you next week, January 21st from 6 p.m. so far, barring anything unforeseen. We will see you again next week. Thank you so very much for being here and being part of our program, for listening, for taking us in live or on the recording. We couldn't do without you. We'll see you next week. Take care.